It's the same authority as any other park in the city. We can do what we want to do, and it's our sole discretion.
I need to read that.
Oh, you want me to I'll give it to you?
There was that.
You know, we went there the other day.
I guess maybe I don't
Setting
have
is great.
it.
The food is good. They have our time.
Yeah.
I mean, just like any restaurant, but I really like it.
Maybe we could. Well, you can just call it.
Okay. Well, welcome all to the Middleton City Hall, and I'm going to call the meeting of Middleton Common Council for February 22nd, 2023 to order. And the first item is the roll call, right?
Alder Hanero.
Here.
Alder Wokus.
Here.
Alder Ramsey.
Here.
Alder Nelson.
Here.
Alder Kuhn.
Here.
Alder Fazard.
Present.
Alder Olson.
Here.
Alder Crow.
Here.
Mayor Brock.
Everyone here. Okay, so the next item is the public comments. It's limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and we have a speaker, Elder Liza Hanero.
I've been a volunteer, I've been an administrator for the past 5 years, and I'm very pleased to represent 5 of our area businesses for the restaurants are 1848 at the Stamp House, the Orange People Beer Cafe, the Nitty Gritty, Imperial Garden, and Breakwater Pine Bar, and also no, that's a huge benefit mom too. My husband and I are making each point to these restaurants. During this month, we drop off a bag of non-perishable food items. In some cases, our donations were the only items in the barrel, and it was a break there on February 1st. So I really hope my fellow council members, staff, and anyone watching go visit these restaurants or drop off food sometime before the drive ahead. Original oil is in short supply at mom, as well as condiments like mayonnaise, mustard, ketchup, and soy sauce. Please also spread the word to friends, families, constituents, and when they visit, make sure to thank the region. That's a lot
Do you want to repeat those places? Just to, yeah.
It's 1848 at the Stamp House, Long Table Beer Cafe, the Nitty Gritty, Imperial Garden, Breakwater Wine Bar, and then the donut.
Is that till the end of the month or is it into the month? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we have Steph Moritz on the Zoom call. She has her hand up. Steph, are you looking to make public comment?
Okay, all right, please go ahead.
Yes, I am. Thank you. The sound is kind of garbled on my end, so I hope you can hear me. Am I coming?
We can hear you well.
Oh, good. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity to address you. I did submit public comments to Mr. Mayor and all the council members, specifically on the agenda item 1 under planning and zoning, and also item 1 under ordinances, both pertaining to the approval of Red Tail Ridge. And I won't reiterate what I said because hopefully you got my written comments, but I do just want to briefly say that I really don't understand why the city is being asked to consider approving these measures without the information contained in the traffic implementation plan. And I just think that's putting the cart before the horse. I think traffic for this development is a big concern for people living south of Red Tail Ridge, such as myself. I live at 3053 Old Creek Road at the corner of Pheasant Branch. And a lot of my neighbors share my concerns. Unfortunately, they're out of town and can't attend the meeting. So I'm representing myself and some of my neighbors, just reiterating that we have these concerns. And I'd really prefer that the council defer a decision until after the traffic study has been completed. And then the other thing I wanted to stress is that I think we need a written contingency in the GIP so that we do not have heavy construction traffic related to this development on Pheasant Branch Road, Old Creek Road, and Frank Lloyd Wright. These streets just are not equipped to handle heavy equipment, heavy construction equipment. And I would hope that the only access would be from High Road or anything other than the roads which I stated. And I thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Is there anyone else who want to speak at this time? Is there anyone else who may want to speak at this time? Brian, is there anyone there? Anyone from the council? Anyone? Okay, all right. I'm going to close that part of the meeting, and we have a presentation today. So I'm going to ask the library director, Jocelyn Sensing, to provide an update of 2022 operations of the Middleton Library. Jocelyn.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the time on the agenda. Every February, the library board signs off on our annual report for the Department of Public Instruction. And as we close out the budgets, thanks to Bill's help, it's always a good time to take a look and see what's happening at the library. We've had, you can go to the next slide, Brian. We've had quite a bit of extreme organizational change that's happened at your public library over the last 3 years. So this is a quick attempt to give you a history of the library's evolution, a look at some highlights from the changes and some snapshots from operations from 2020, and then a quick look at some future opportunities and challenges. Next slide.
Had quite a bit of extreme organizational change.
So this is a page taken directly from our library's website. And I really like to reference this when we're talking about the evolution of the library, because since the library's inception in 1926, we've gone through over 6 major evolutions, including at least 4, or actually 5 different buildings. The current library was built in 1990, and the lower level was entirely renovated and access for accessibility in 2004. So the current facility is a really good example of how to build a building to grow into. And the Next Chapter project, which we endeavored in 2019 was the start of that, implemented a phased installation of building-wide updates that reflected 3 major priorities, which we'll take a look at. And this did not include, however, any construction or restrooms. So we didn't tear down any walls. We didn't look to improve the mechanical. It was mostly aesthetic changes to improve services and access. So the first goal of the Next Chapter project was to increase the square footage available to the public. So we did this with rearranging the entire floor plan for the whole building. Moving stacks is no easy task, and we decided on a flow that really opened things up by rearranging some staff spaces and also moving the Friends bookstore upstairs. At the time, we were able to open up 3,000 square feet that was originally taken up by storage and other things. We reduced the size of the physical collection per the Dane County standards as a result of changes with digital materials. We'll take a look at circulation in just a little bit. We added a local history room that also serves as a designated quiet space. As the library continues to get louder, public libraries are not quiet anymore. The days of shushing are long gone. But it's important not to underestimate the importance of dedicated quiet space within a public facility. We moved some of the computers upstairs to create a more engaging atmosphere for all ages to use technology. And we added new flooring in the entryway and then in the Archer meeting room that were several of our really high traffic areas. We overhauled all of the building signage and we added paint throughout to de-beige and define spaces. Next slide.
The computers upstairs.
The second goal was create flexible spaces for new ways of gathering. If we could put a wheel on it, we did. We also increased the seating, including active seating, which is a really great option for anyone who has sensory needs or just likes to move. We are able to offer now more intergenerational pop-up programming because we opened up that floor space. If you remember in the teen area, we had some millwork that was really beautiful, but really limiting with how we could use the floor plan. So we tore that down, opened it up, and that was a space that's able to be used for many different purposes. We also created an art gallery featuring local artists, most of them specific to Middleton. This was made possible through a very generous donation from the Christensen family. And we updated and improved the entry for better security with eyes on the door. Previously, we had our backs to the door as staff. And so this improved security and helped to improve the customer service experience. We also improved technology throughout the building, especially in the meeting rooms. And we created space for strengthened partnerships. These are just a few of the ones that we have MOU agreements with. The YWCA is a partnership with the Middleton Police Department and the school district. They do the healing circles on a weekly basis at the library, and they have a dedicated space to be able to do that on a weekly basis. We also work with the Madison Literacy Network. This is also a partnership with the school district. They are offering language classes at Sauk Trail, and then their celebrations and practice happen at the library. The Friends of the Library help to support that project or partnership rather. And then the Friends of the Pheasant Branch are using the library for Conservancy Days. And for the last several years, the high school Next Chapter tutoring program has happened at the library. So this is just to name a few. Next slide. And then the third goal of the Next Chapter project was to improve the customer service experience. So this is probably one of the more invisible goals that we had because it really focused internally on our staff and our own systems and structures for operating, but probably had the most impact on service delivery. So we went through a major overhaul of our staff. Kathy, you probably remember back in the day, we had an org chart that had like 7 department heads, 3 of which were just in use services. It was a really hairy, messy org chart. So over the course of several vacancies, and then with the pandemic, we were able to reduce the staff to be able to blow it up and put it back together. So we reclassified our major part-time positions and retrained every single position through a Back to Basics program. We rewrote every single job description, including the director's job description with the help of Brian Wooltopter and the library board. We did a complete overhaul of the organizational chart. These are included in the past budget narratives. If you want to do a comparison, it would be great to look at 2019 and then 2022. We, in doing this, created a better path for employment advancement. And then we also changed our service delivery model. So we previously had 3 points of service throughout the building, and we're staffing all 3 points of service. With the redesign of the floor plan, we're able to reduce that to 2 points of service, which greatly helped with our part-time scheduling. And instead of having designated tasks at certain desks, where we were pinballing people around the building to check out, to place a hold, to get technology help. Part of that reclassification of positions and retraining everyone with Back to Basics meant that we now do everything at every single desk. So you can register for a library card, you can place a hold, you can do all of your business at any of the 2 service desks. We also moved all of our processing to the back room so that we could better focus on that customer service. We also moved to a team-based planning approach. So last year was the first year that we implemented programming within the 212 operating fund as an essential service. And in doing that, we were able to really create a structure with ourselves where we're budgeting more efficiently and planning more strategically long-term across youth services, adult services, and outreach. And we also implemented universal scheduling. So instead of having one level of staff that only works one desk, we're now moving everyone through the building. So we have a much better sense of a holistic staff. Next slide.
strategically long-term
Other changes that we also have gone through recently, we created a naming rights program and improved donor stewardship. We rebranded with an updated style guide and logo. We had a major policy overhaul. So every single policy at the library, which is set by the library board, was reviewed and updated, and a schedule was created for looking at those every 3 years. We overall improved processes and efficiencies, and staff report that they now have higher job satisfaction, enjoy the improved teamwork, and especially the legacy staff say that it is the best it's ever been. High morale. We've also had a big focus the last year and a half or so on the Library Board of Trustees and the Friends of the Library Board development. It's a big job to be a library trustee. It's a governing board, not an advisory board that follows state statutes, and there's a lot to learn. So the education around public libraries in the state of Wisconsin takes some time, and we've tried to be more intentional about how we're supporting trustees through that educational process. So all of this was done with a budget of $500,000 that included no additional capital funds. So $300,000 was pulled together with Bill's help as we scraped the 204 fund from a variety of gifts and fines and fees that we'd collected over the years, and some miscellaneous revenue that had gone unspent to come up with that $300,000. And then we exceeded the goal for fundraising of $200,000 in February with over 450 individual donors that also included a major gift from the Friends of the Library. So the fact that we could overachieve a $200,000 fundraising in the midst of a pandemic when we were actually closed was pretty incredible. That's how much people love their library here. And so we would be remiss to say that all of this extreme organizational change also happened while we were in the pandemic, moved all of our programming virtual, and provided curbside. So we survived. Next slide.
Wow, what a great job, Jocelyn. I guess there are a lot of things even I didn't
I've
know
got
about.
a few more slides, Mayor. Thank you. So our visitor count is not quite where it was in 2019. We were open for a total of 3,380 hours in 2022. That's just a few 100 or about 100 hours shy or so of where we would normally be had we been open on Sundays. So because we were still rebounding, we were rebuilding staff, and we were redefining those services, and we were also welcoming people back to the library. The library board in 2021 made the decision that we would remain closed for Sundays and build that into the 2022 and now 2023 and 2024 budgets. So the Sunday hours were something that we requested through the referendum process, didn't make it into that this time, but we will be coming back and asking for that again as part of the next budget cycle. We had previously been open just from Labor Day to Memorial Day on Sundays 1 to 5. And before we closed for the pandemic, the library board had the goal of being open Sundays all year round. And that's what we would really like to do. There's a lot of people that can't get to the library during the week, and that really is demonstrated through the programming attendance that we have on Saturdays. Next slide.
We had previously been
Our tech is way up. We added Hoopla, which is a streaming digital service. Last year, this year, we've added Canopy. If you stream on Roku or any casting device and you see Canopy as one of the app options or Hoopla as one of the app options, you can use those for free through your local public library. You just need to log in with a library card and PIN number. This is really demonstrating the change in shifting services from physical items to digital items. Overdrive refers to the Wisconsin Digital Public Library Consortium. So we work with libraries across the whole state of Wisconsin to provide digital resources. And while Middleton still has a very, very strong connection and a lot of opinions about print materials, people here like to read, they know what they like to read, they buy books, they use books, everyone really appreciates the physical material. We saw a huge shift towards digital during the pandemic. So some of that is reflected in this checkouts. We also are seeing an increase in the Wi-Fi sessions. So more people have their devices, they're using the library for hoteling. And people are still using computers in public libraries. Next slide.
appreciate.
Our library cards registration went up 69% over last year. Out of that 18,602 total current card holders, about 11,000 are outside of Middleton. Anyone within the South Central Library System, which includes 7 counties, can apply for a library card and use over 50 libraries in any of those 7 counties. Pre-pandemic, we were holding strong for about 3 years in a row, right at about 19 to 20,000. So we're close to where we were before we closed for the pandemic.
Anyone within the South Central Library System?
This is my favorite slide because it really demonstrates how the library is really being used. These are our total number of programs. So we offered 1,165 programs in 2022 with over 38,000 attendees. This is an increase of 19% from 2021. Out of that total, 46 of those programs were geared specifically towards seniors and or partnered with senior living assisted living sites or the senior center. And those saw over 595 attendees. So a really fun breakdown of children's, teens, all ages, and outreach. Pre-pandemic, we had a few more programs. I think it was like almost 1,200 programs, but just as many attendees. So even though we're offering a little bit less programming in 2022, we still had just as many people turn out.
So a really fun
this is a good example of our outreach efforts. We visited 140 schools. We were in the parks 20 times. That's Amy Perry up there on the right. She's our outreach librarian. We have 1 FTE that's dedicated to this. She offered over 245 total events. And out of that 38-some thousand total attendees, almost 11,000 of them were related to outreach visits. Here's an example of our study room use. So this is something that we also look at in terms of trends. So 2018 there on the right, moving into the current or last year of 2022 on the left, you can see that the bookings have since we've closed, but they're not quite to where they were in 2018, yet the number of hours is right about the same. So that means there's fewer sessions, but people are using the rooms for longer. This is something that was in really high demand right when we reopened. Everyone wants to have a private room, either for not being exposed and having their own dedicated space where they can wipe everything down, or they're just using the room for longer periods of time for meetings. People conduct interviews. We help people Skype. There's all kinds of options that, including tutoring, that people use the study rooms for. Here's our live checkouts. So the blue is the physical items. The orange is hoopla, which is just added last year. So we're just establishing a baseline for that. And the gray is overdrive. So you can start to see here visually where the piece of the pie is becoming a little bit bigger with digital materials. These are also trends that we're seeing across the country.
The physical items.
So a few challenges, facilities, funding, and censorship. You've heard us talk many, many times, and we'll continue to, about the aging mechanical at the library that we're preparing for. We are looking at bumping up to some of those Dane County standards per capita. We kept a really close eye on the number of physical items that we need to have, and we're well over that, but we're bumping up close to the square footage per capita. There's a whole set of standards that we follow per Dane County to remain tax exempt. And so that's something that we're keeping a really close eye on. We're also just constantly balancing the need for space for people, the public meeting room reservations, and the collections. Funding is something that Bill and I have both mentioned in previous meetings, especially as we get closer to that TID closure. Dane County and cross-county funding is being evaluated right now. So in addition to receiving about half of our total budget from Dane County, we receive a small portion from all of the adjacent counties to Dane. And those funds are calculated based on how people are using them, specifically the Middleton Public Library. So if somebody outside of the South Central Library System uses the library library that's calculated into a formula, and then we would receive a payment from that. So that's where one of the intergovernmental funding sources comes from. And then just ongoing increased operating costs. The library, especially in the publishing world, is seeing increased material costs just like everybody else. And then lastly, one of the big challenges that public libraries are facing around the country is coordinated and targeted efforts to restrict access to information. This is something that the library board has taken a very strong stance on. Intellectual freedom is a benchmark for public libraries. It's the reason I'm a librarian. And these efforts to ban books are driven primarily by organizations, not individuals, that have funding, and they are targeting specifically LGBTQIA books and books that support things that could be considered critical race theory. So far in Middleton, we have not had a formal materials challenge. We do have a process for this. We have a very strong collections policy that lines out how a book is purchased, where it's put in the library, how it is removed from the library. If someone were to have concerns about any kind of materials that we have at the library, we have a whole process and procedure for how we address those concerns. And with every challenge, we do have opportunities. So with the possibility of a bookmobile, we would look to expand services through a mobile library. If we would want to look at how could we experiment with a route or a stop at a specific location that we would want to build support around for a facility or something like that, that's a really common strategy. We would need to look at either reducing where we're offering outreach services right now or add additional staff because we're totally maxed out. A mobile library would support quite a bit of the efforts that we're already doing. And that will continue to be a discussion with the library board. We also have a lot of opportunity to continue building our efforts through cross-departmental coordination and support that goes internally at the library and across the whole city. Just last Friday, we had one of the EMS staff come and do a training on how to administer Narcan for the library staff. That was very well received, and we really appreciated the quality support. And then lastly, this is something that we don't necessarily talk about enough, and that is how can we leverage the goodwill and the trust of the library to increase civic engagement. As we are increasingly divided politically across the country, public libraries remain one of the institutions that people trust and that they go to for help. And we can leverage that when it comes to civic engagement.
Lastly, this is something that we don't necessarily.
The library board recently updated the mission, vision, and values for the library, along with the strategic plan. This is also posted on the website. Next slide. You'll see here in the strategic roadmap, the area of focus number 2, civic engagement. That very first goal is to align the goals of the Middleton Public Library with the goals of the city of Middleton. Previously, the library operated very separately from the city. Up until just about 5 or 6 years ago, the library had its own handbook, its own employee handbook, its own set of all kinds of things that we were not aligned with ordinance or the city or the council on. So over the last 5 to 6 years, we worked really hard to let go of a lot of that autonomy, but yet still remain within the Chapter 43 state statute. These examples are demonstrated every single month through the library board roadmap reports. So if you're interested in how each of these focus areas are brought to life, midlibrary.org/board is where you can find all those monthly reports. Next slide. And then as we move forward, especially as we plan for the community campus future, it's important to think that and to keep a wide mindset, especially a 21st century library mindset. So if libraries equal strong communities, then libraries are more than books, and literacy is more than reading. Literacy is talked about a lot with financial literacy, health literacy, and these are all things that the library can help to support. And the library can also be one of the best references for the Senior Center and Parks and Rec. We are constantly referring people to Parks and Recreation programs. Anybody comes in and they have a question about something specific to seniors. We've even walked people down the street and across, straight up to the front door, letting them know where the Senior Center is. When we think about library programs, we are trying to always offer something quality, something meaningful that's within the mission, vision, values, but it's not necessarily going to be that specific or in-depth service that someone might receive at the Senior Center, or if they paid for a Parks and Rec program where there's fewer people and it's more interactive with the presenter. So as we move forward, especially with the Sunday hours, we are experimenting with how we can build some momentum around those Sundays. And so everyone is invited this Sunday, the 26th, from 1 to 4 p.m., the end of the winter reading program celebration, along with mini golf, is happening on Sunday at the library. It would be great to see you there. Thank you.
Well, great job. So I guess there were a lot of things which I said earlier I wasn't aware of, and maybe even George would want to talk to you and put in his newspaper. But I think it's good to share. I think a lot of people aren't really aware of all of these things happening. Most of the time, most of the complaints which I have gotten is about this Sunday, and I think you're already trying to address that issue, because I did see that some of the library in Madison are open on Sundays, but not all of them. So I do know that Fitchburg, Verona, Santa Prairie, they are. So your consideration of having Sunday hours, that's great. Any question from the Kathy?
I have a quick question. The mobile library, would that factor into the equation you had for like the square footage for per capita for Dane County? You said we're bumping up. It does not.
Yeah, it does not. There is a spot on the annual report for the DPI for mobile library service, or if it's a vehicle dedicated to extending services, but it does not count towards square footage.
Okay, even though it takes it outside.
Yeah.
Okay. You didn't mention the self-checkout. That's very, very popular now.
Oh, yes. Yes. The automation that we have happening, I haven't done an audit to see exactly what it would cost in terms of FTE to replace that, but we have 5 self-checks at the library, 1 mobile that we pull out during programs. And we also have the sorter in the back room, the conveyor belt sorter.
Good, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions for the library director? Well, let's give her a big hand. Great job. Thank you for doing this. Okay, we move on to the next item, which is the approval of the consent agenda as recommended to the council by committee commission board. That has first item is the approval of the February 7, 2023 Common Council meeting minutes. Second is the audit of the bills. Third is the review of an application for the alcohol beverage license for Quick Trip. Number 4 is the application for outdoor and amplified sound permit for Glowing Smiles. And number 5 is the amendment number 2 to agreement with MSA for design and real estate services for Parmenter Street reconstruction. Need a motion to approve.
This is Fazzard. I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
This is Elder Q, and I'll second that.
Any questions or comments? I do have a question for Sean. Why is the Sean Parmenter Street getting delayed? It's going to go into 24 now. What happened?
Nice. So preliminary design is a little bit behind schedule, which means we're just getting ready to start real estate services. So by the time we complete that and finish final design, would not be a good time to try to bid or construct this. So we're pushing that to next year instead.
So what happened? Was there too many things that how did it get delayed?
I think it's, well, that's the short version. Yes. On a little bit on their end, they've gone through several project managers, and a little bit on my end. I've been busy with lots of other things. So I haven't always been able to timely get back to them with review or comments, so that we could move forward.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Sean. Otherwise, all those in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We are on to miscellaneous items. This is item number 1, which is the change to Parks and Recreation Aquatic Center seasonal staff wages.
This is Alder Kuhn. I'll make that motion to approve.
Need a second.
This is Bizarre. I'll second that.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Lisa, you had some? Go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify that the Finance Committee did approve this. However, if you look at the memo, it indicates that $14,262 will come from general contingency, and we are recommending that it come from the ARPA funds, but we'll get to
Okay.
that.
So is that a amended motion then?
Do I need to amend it at this time, or it's just, we're just talking about increasing the,
Yeah, I
Wage-
think
staff
this
wages.
item is really just approving the increase in the wages, and the funding is in the resolution later in the agenda.
yep,
Okay, all right. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve the change to Parks and Recreation Aquatic Center seasonal staff wages, say aye.
aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. We are on to item number 2, tentative agreement with firefighters local 311, which is EMS.
This is Alder Kuhn. I'll make the motion to approve.
This is Bizarre. I will second.
Any questions or comments?
Just a point of information, this is to allow staff to transmit the document back to the local 311 for their review and ratification. The final document will come back to the council for your review and final approval before anything is settled.
And Bill, you said we have the money to take care of any increased wages or any of that.
Yeah, the calculated amount for 2023 is within the personnel contingency amount that was approved as part of the budget, in addition to the planned use of an EMS flex grant for a one-time adjustment approved as part of this. So yes, the funding is in the budget.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Elder Emily.
Yeah, I want to say thank you to the negotiators for bargaining in good faith with our local, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Emily. Okay, if there are no other questions or comments, all those in favor of the motion to approve the tentative agreement with firefighters local 311, which is EMS, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. We are on to the resolution and item number 1. This is the resolution 2023-02. This is the petitioning for Wisconsin Secretary of Transportation, petitioning the Wisconsin Secretary of Transportation for airport improvement aid. And Nairo, who want to make the motion?
Did we skip the planning and zoning?
I think we moved that.
Don't have it here.
My apologies.
Oh, okay. Okay, do I have a motion?
I will move approval of resolution 2023-02 petitioning the Wisconsin Secretary of Transportation for airport improvement aid with the changes reflected on the draft.
Okay, need a second.
This is Alder Kuhn. I'll second that.
Okay, any questions or comments? I'm really glad that you were able to work with the Wisconsin Bureau of Aeronautics, and I did see that they made some small change there too. So I think it looks good. So
The document that's on the screen is the red line version that incorporates the changes discussed at the last council meeting.
okay. And
I just, Lisa, thank you for bringing those changes to the attention and then allowing the time for it to work, get approved and stuff. I think this is a much better document for that. So thank you.
Great.
And I appreciate council members accepting the changes. I can live without the reference to the airport enterprise fund being the source of the funds. Although, as chair of the finance committee, I feel like assurance number 24 is the most important one. That's the one about being self-sustaining, because I feel if we can't have the airport be self-sustaining with the significant subsidies that we get from the federal and state governments, what's the point of participating in the airport improvement program? So since we can set the user fees and our residents have told us that they want the users to pay for the costs from the city, that's something I'll be looking at in the future, but this resolution is acceptable to me.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, all those in favor of approving the resolution 2023-02 petitioning the Wisconsin Secretary of Transportation for airport improvement aid, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. We are on to item number 2. This is the resolution 2023-06 Parliamentary Street reconstruction relocation order. Need a motion.
This is Wilkes. I'll make that motion on behalf of Public Works.
Okay.
This is Vizard, I'll second.
Okay, so city need planned reconstruction of Parliamentary from Century to Greenbrier Road. So any questions or comments? Yeah.
I have a question for Sean, and that is looking at the map. Brian or Bill, if you'd bring up the map on page, well, I don't know what number it is now with the changes. But can you explain exactly what this action means to someone who's not on Public Works? And you might guess one of my interests is what this means for Middleton Outreach Ministry.
Sure. There is that goofy shape along the west side of the right-of-way. So part of that will need to acquire some right-of-way in which to build the road. Most of the rest of it is temporary limited easements. So if you see the letters TLE, that just means we need to do some grading work beyond the right-of-way, but it's short-term in nature. We're going to alter grades, plant some grass, and go away. PLE means we need a permanent limited easement, such as for a retaining wall that may go beyond the edge of the right-of-way, or for stormwater management ponds. Sometimes we'll need that. But where you see that cross hatching, sort of, right, in front of where mom is, and it might get up into the property to the north of there, that would be right-of-way acquisition, so purchase of land.
So it does not impact the operation of the mom, I imagine.
It wouldn't get into their operations, no, because they're set back from the road quite a
Okay,
ways.
yeah, you're right.
It would, there's a ditch over there with a slope. It would take over some of that land.
Maybe improve it. Okay, any question for Sean or any other questions or comments? Okay, otherwise, all those in favor of the motion approving the resolution 2023-06, which is the Parliament Street reconstruction, this is the relocation order, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We are on to item number 3. This is the resolution 2023-08. This is the declaring intent to assess cost of improvements for Middleton Springs Drive reconstruction. Needed.
I'll make that motion.
This is Wilkes. I'll second.
Okay, any questions or comments? It's a routine thing which has to be done. Any questions or comments? Otherwise, all those in favor of the motion to approve the resolution 2023-08 declaring intent to assess cost improvements for Middleton Springs Drive reconstruction, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We are on to resolution number 4, item number 4, resolution 2023-09, altering the date for the end of public emergency declaration.
I'll make a motion to approve the version of resolution 2023-09 showing on the screen.
Just a
Okay.
clarification, this is just a one, correct a spelling error, and two, provide more clarity to what the motion from the council, the previous council meeting was.
Okay, so,
Fazard, second, the motion.
okay,
I just have a question,
yeah.
if I may, if we know when we might have we got dates for a committee of the whole? Okay. Okay.
And then just to note that this change reflects what's actually in the original resolution ending the public emergency. We weren't talking about changing the date of ending the public emergency. It was just the effective date of when the meetings would resume.
Yeah, yeah. Good.
Can you remind me for the committees, are they going to be in person in May or are they choosing themselves?
There's an ordinance that's a draft ordinance on the agenda, a couple items down to address that question for discussion for council.
Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, all those in favor of approving the resolution 2023-09, altering the date for the end of public emergency declaration, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Motion- Okay, so motion passes 7-1. We are on to item number 5. This is the resolution 2023-10, declaring intent to assess cost of improvement for Pleasant View Road reconstruction.
This is Olson. I'll make the motion to approve as recommended by Public Works and Finance.
Okay, you need a second?
I'll second that. This is an
Okay.
item.
Any questions or comments? So Sean, I do see that we will be assessing even the city properties because the city of Madison does. We normally don't do that, right? So, and then also, of course, the town properties that's deferred until we did annex part of it, some of it, right? So though that will be still deferred, right?
We annexed the right of way that we acquired, but not the abutting properties. Those are still in the town on the west side, once you're north of the golf course. As far as assessing city properties, that normally is done for some TIF funded projects in the past. The city council has elected not to pursue assessments, but in this particular project, though it's funded by TIF, the city council previously elected to follow Madison's lead, which was to assess city properties. And they also have deferred assessments, I believe, on town properties for some period of time.
Okay. And this will be in 7 installments rather than fewer because of the amount of money, so.
Correct, right. That's the recommendation from staff and Public Works.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, otherwise, all those in favor of approving the resolution 2023-10, declaring the intent to assess cost of improvement for Pleasant View Road reconstruction, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We are on to item number 6. This is the resolution 2023-11, approving a budget adjustment for the 2023 tax incremental financing district number 3, budget for the downtown plaza project.
This is Olson. I'll move approval as recommended by Finance.
This is Nelson. I'll second.
Okay. Any question or comments?
Kathy, is the fundraising committee confident that they'll be able to get the additional 9,000?
I think it's all already been
It's already
taken
been
out.
allocated. Okay.
So money's all there. And Bill tells me that tip money is there too, so. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion approving the resolution 2023-11, approving a budget adjustment for the 2023 tax incremental financing district number 3, budget for the downtown plaza project, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We are on to resolution, item number 7, resolution 2023-12, authorizing the reappropriation of 2022 year-end ARPA carryovers and 2023 adjusted budget amounts.
This is Hanira. I'll move approval of the resolution 2023-12 as amended by the Finance Committee.
And this is Alder Kuhn. I'll second that.
Okay, any questions or comments? Do you want to highlight that for the
Do we-
elders who were not here?
Do we have the amendment?
Yeah, the amendment was to approve the list with the addition of the use of $14,260 for the aquatic center wages and to adjust the unallocated amount downward by that amount.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of approving the resolution 2023-12 authorizing the reappropriation of 2022 year-end ARPA carryovers and 2023 adjusted budget amounts, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Opposed, I wanted to have the rest of the carryover put back on Hidden Oak Stormwater,
Okay,
but I am in favor of the increase for the pool staff.
so you're against this motion,
I am
right?
against the
Okay,
motion.
so motion passes 7-1. Now, we are on to item number 8. This is the resolution 2023-13, authorizing the use of general contingency for 2023 seasonal wages at the Middleton Aquatic Center.
This is Haniro. I will move approval of resolution 2023-13 as amended by the Finance Committee.
This is Alder Kuhn. I'll second that.
Okay, so Bill, do you want to?
Yeah, that adjustment at the Finance Committee was to substitute the use of general contingency with the use of $14,262 from the previously unallocated ARPA funds that were just addressed in the previous item.
Okay. Okay, any questions or comments? Kendra? Okay. Okay, all those in favor of approving the resolution 2023-13 authorizing the use of general contingency for 2023 seasonal wages at the Middleton Aquatic Center, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We are on to the ordinances. This is the first reading. Final action may be taken by approval or motion to suspend rules under section 1.07 Milton General Ordinances. Item number 1, ordinance for rezoning lands from agriculture to Planned Development District General Implementation Plan. This is the Red Tail Ridge. It used to be called Acre Farm Development. Need a motion.
So you move to approve with the listed conditions.
As approved by the Plan Commission with all those conditions. Okay, need a second.
Alder Ramsey, are you asking to suspend the rules?
No, I am not.
Yep, I will second that.
Okay. So, Mark, are you going to address? There are a lot of citizen concerns, even one now. So could you, there's a TIA, there's a stormwater, there's the construction equipment not going on the Pheasant Branch. Well, all of those. So you probably already heard.
Thank
it,
you.
so.
First, I wanted to start by saying I sent you a revised ordinance today to correct a couple typos that Alder Haniro pointed out to you. Thanks, Lisa. And so that should be, we uploaded the packet with the correct information. Well, actually, no, that one is not corrected in the packet. I'll get to the correction in a moment. So, but that was sent to you by email earlier today. Last week, the Planning Commission recommended approval of the rezoning ordinance with 8 conditions that are listed in the summary sheet. You'll note that the Public Works approval of the TIA, the traffic impact analysis, is the first condition of approval. And I will say that the Public Works staff or city engineer anticipates that the preliminary findings of the TIA will be available in mid-April. That said, we are aware, as you heard tonight, there are lingering concerns about traffic impacts from the development. And we've received a couple of questions from some council members as well regarding this. So I wanted to address those tonight, specifically the sequence of approval. This isn't the first time that a rezoning ordinance has come before the council before completion of the TIA. If you could, Brian, please load a file that planning staff created. So we went back, thanks to Abby's help, and looked back at the last 6 GIPs, the last 3 years. And the green shows where the council approved the GIP for Bell Farm, Masson Development Corporation, T5, which is the Captain Bill's site. And I could see the others a moment ago. Thank you. No, it's all right. Threshold, so Prime Urban Properties on University Avenue, Broad Branch at the corner of Branch and Century, and then the Trotta. And these are all instances where the TIA was approved after the rezoning ordinance. In a few cases, it was approved 2 to 3 months after the rezoning ordinance was approved. One of these cases, Bell Farms, involved a preliminary plat, which also was, of course, approved after the rezoning ordinance. And so I just wanted to bring that to your attention that this is not unprecedented. It's actually quite common that we have the TIA process running along as a contingency of approval. It is the obligation of the developer to fulfill and meet any findings of the TIA as reviewed by the city engineer and the Public Works Committee to address those findings sufficient to their satisfaction. I would also add that when you get to the preliminary plat item, we have a contingency, a condition of approval we're recommending to more directly link the rezoning process with the plat approval process. So I'll get to that at the preliminary plat stage. So I guess what I wanted to just summarize that, like a lasagna, the approval process involves many layers, and each is a key ingredient that requires approval before a building permit can ever be issued. So that's my summary.
Any questions for Mark?
I have one.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you for that explanation, Mark, because I did have a question about, are we putting the cart before the horse? So my question is, though, given all those instances where the TIA came after the rezoning, has it ever been the case with any of those that the results of the TIA led to a change in something like the traffic layout or, the street layout? Because as you know, the concern that people have right now, or the most vocal people, is about the access to Pheasant Branch Road and the traffic that's going to produce for Old Creek Road and also the Frank Lloyd Wright intersection. And I'm just wondering, is it ever the case that the TIA winds up revealing some traffic impact that we then ask the developer to adjust around?
I think one example would be the Bruce Company project recently, and Sean could speak better to this, but I know that raised some issues specifically with access on Donna Drive and the proposed street that led to some extensive discussions with the developer that have been going on for several weeks, if not months. I can't think of, I know with Bell Farm, was there anything, Sean, in particular? I mean, Sean probably could address this better than I could.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can't think of any that outright had really significant effects on recommendations for the street network at large. I can think of some that have had recommendations for approaches, number of lanes or length of a turn lane, or whether or not there should be a median opening in the middle of a road. But not whether or not there should be a road. I haven't seen it to that degree. So that hasn't been one of the recommendations that I've seen.
But
the contingency is that they'll either address the recommendations to our satisfaction, or have to come back here and reopen the whole GIP approval process.
What about a situation where it's not a road that is recommended against, but rather having the road end in a cul-de-sac instead of an intersection?
I don't think that I've seen one either that recommended effectively cutting access or closing off a road.
And Emily?
Yeah, I just want to say, I'm really excited about this project. I know they're going to have senior housing and single family homes, things that people are asking for. But the traffic is concerning. Some of the roads in Alder Hanairo's district remind me of some of the roads in my district where people are just passing through. I know I've sometimes used them getting somewhere, not realizing I was on that road and then realizing I have to make a left somewhere that's difficult. And I'm saying that because when I was doing doors, people in that area were telling me that there's a lot of traffic flowing through from Wanakee that are coming around from around the farmland already. And they're trying to get to Highway 12. And they're just trying to get over, which I think goes into your district. So I just want to make sure that we are thoughtful in getting traffic to where they want to go now and be supportive of that, especially as you guys are designing, helping the developer get to where they're going. Because I recall that Red Tail Ridge is going to have over 400 housing units. And that's just a lot of people moving in. And it's a good thing, but so no question, just more saying there's already a lot of traffic on High Road and then trying to get all of those other people on during high traffic volume will be something to watch. And I look forward to it because I think we'll do a good job.
Sure.
Okay.
I think I would add that, we don't have a lot of north-south streets of any meaningful length. There are just relatively few of them in Middleton. But between Bell Farm, Misty Valley, which has been there a while, and this development, it should actually help some of that east-west traffic get over to Highway 12. And then the other thing, of course, is that fairly recently, the county took off the board our plans for continued residential development in what was the old acre farm just east of here. That's now part of that county conservancy acquisition. So overall, our master planning has changed over time too.
Kathy Olson.
I don't know, Mark or Sean, has it ever happened? This is contingent on a traffic impact analysis. Has it ever happened that that analysis comes back and the neighbors aren't content with what's in that and they want to see more? And can it ever change based on more neighborhood feedback, or is it what's set in the traffic impact analysis?
That's a good question. I don't have my finger on the pulse of that. I know that when Stagecoach Apartments went in on Century Avenue, there was much concern with that. When the Lake Street Apartments more recently were proposed, there was much concern about that from a TIA perspective.
But at that point, it was just, this is what the TIA says, and this is what the approval process is. There's not another evaluation more to take into account any further input.
Well, we do take into account further input. So we've had people, for instance, with the Lake Street Apartments come by at TIA discussions with the Public Works Committee and express concerns.
Okay.
And they're valid concerns. They're there right now.
Okay.
They're not going to get better with more traffic. But it isn't attributable to that development that there's a problem. So it has to be addressed either way.
That's good to know, because if this traffic impact analysis comes back and there's still further concerns beyond what that, we have room for discussion. So good.
Right.
If I could add a couple points. So this has been in our growth area for over 20 years. It's embodied in our intergovernmental agreement with the town of Springfield. Regardless of which development goes in, this just is the one that you're considering tonight. But if this development weren't approved, we still have this as our growth area for the city to provide a mix of housing, address the missing middle housing, for example, that the developer is trying to address. And how that area develops, it's still going to involve cars. And we believe that this project in particular, with the range of housing and the emphasis on having some neighborhood supportive commercial, and the focus on walking and trails, is a way to help reduce the increase in traffic that could have happened with a traditional suburban development. With all due respect to Alder Crow, the northeast side of the city lacks commercial housing. commercial development.
Yep.
And obviously that with Bishop's Bay, we're hoping that there will be some commercial development in the future so that residents up there don't all have to drive to get into the city. So the focus with this project is to have some commercial development towards the western end, towards High Road and Bellefontaine intersection. We also really, over the years, have been emphasizing grid, a street grid instead of long cul-de-sacs. It's just a better way to distribute traffic and have complete streets. Imagine if Pheasant Branch Ridge or Middleton Hills had developed without their linkages to Pheasant Branch Road. People who live on Whittlesey would have to drive all the way west, or on Gaylord Nelson would have to drive all the way west, or in the case of Middleton Hills, they can at least go south. But we really feel having connectivity is the way to go here, so that you don't place any, so that no one street is burdened with traffic. So I guess those are the 2 points I would add.
Any other questions, Randall?
Yeah, I just wanted to address kind of when we had the joint meeting with Town of Springfield, to talk about how traffic would impact not just City of Middleton residents, but also Town of Springfield. So their concerns with traffic on High Road and Greenbrier Road, again, people getting to Highway 12. So I guess I would like to see that kind of addressed too in the TIA, or not just, traffic specifically, where's the traffic going to go getting into City of Middleton, but the impact it'll have in the whole area.
One of the key, it's really good that Bell Farm came in first, because that's to provide the connection with Bellefontaine west to connecting High Road and Misty Valley Middleton Ridge subdivision with Parmenter Street. That will also benefit the folks who move into Red Tail Ridge eventually.
Right.
Greenbrier Road, as we all know, and as we've heard from our friends in the Town of Springfield, has really become a pretty significant regional route for people who are looking for an alternative to Highway K. I used to live on High Road, and I could see in the morning that intersection how traffic was just steadily coming south on High Road from Balzer and then turning west onto Greenbrier. It was just a very steady flow. So obviously, a lot of that's not most of that actually isn't our traffic,
right?
But we're all part of the same community in terms of the broader county, and so we all need to do our part to manage the traffic.
Well, and the idea that Red Tail Ridge would then add to that,
right?
That traffic from Wanakee, from points north.
That traffic is going to be added whether we do Red Tail or Wanakee puts in another big development.
Yeah.
I understand the concerns, and that's why we are having the TIA done, so that it can quantify any issues that there may be. But as Mark said, it's our growth area. It's the only real place that we have left to develop. It's being done in a responsible way, where there's single family homes, there's middle missing, there's some higher density. You could go in there and you could just put in high-rise apartments and fit 10,000 people in there and really have the traffic. So there's many competing things that we have to deal with. And our comprehensive plan says that we want denser communities, we want some single family, we want some missing middle housing. A byproduct of all these things are going to be traffic. But if we don't do it here, all that's going to do is it's going to push it out into Wanakee or across Plains, and then we're just going to have urban sprawl, and we're still going to get all that traffic coming through to us. At least with a project like Red Tail, we have an opportunity to have an input into the conversation and have our own TIA done and somewhat be able to minimize what some of the effects may be, and still reap the benefit of the development. So I think what we're doing here is very responsible in terms of our comprehensive plan and what we'd like to see for housing in the city of Middleton, with the different price points that this development is looking at. And we're being very responsible with the GIP, where we're saying that one of our conditions for the GIP is that if the TIA brings forth any issues, that the developer is going to have to deal with them before he has final approval of the GIP and can move on to the SIP. So it's all these issues, it's always like anything else, so much more complicated because it's not just a traffic issue. It's a broad thing that we have to look at. And I think that in this particular case, I think that we as a city are doing a very good thing in this development. And we're checking off a lot of the things that are part of our comprehensive plan, part of our what our ideal of Middleton is. So I'm glad that we have the condition of the TIA in there to deal with any issues that might come up, but I'm very supportive of this development.
Thank you. And Elder Hernando and then Katina.
Yes, this development will be going into what is currently my district. And I, as much as I love open land and I applaud the county for extending the Pheasant Branch Conservancy, even though it took up some of the land that we would have used for housing development. But I think this development with its 2 parks and its trails, this is going to go forward, and I welcome the families that will be moving in there. And I want to make sure that if we open up the plug that right now exists between Pheasant Branch Road and High Road south of Balzer, the people who buy, I don't know what street name it has right now, but the people who live along the east-west streets are going to see all of that Wanakee traffic come flowing through instead of continuing on Balzer, or a significant chunk of it. So I just want to make sure that everybody is aware, including the prospective home buyers, that everybody's aware of what the traffic impact is. I did have a question for Brian, and that is, can you pull up what the actual motion is? Because I see the ordinance and I can read the ordinance, but I don't see any of the contingencies referenced in the ordinance. And I just want to make sure we all know what we're voting on. Sure.
There are 8 of them. Yeah, that will be under the city staff report. What I guess that's okay.
Okay.
A question though, in the phasing system.
There it is.
Do they pull the road all the way through?
So it's just the top under general implementation plan with the addition of, is this where the additional item is going to appear?
So if I may, number 3 of the ordinance amendment states, this ordinance shall take effect on the date that the zoning administrator certifies fulfillment by the petitioner of all the conditions specified for the rezoning of the property as approved by the Plan Commission on February 14th, 2023. And then those are the conditions.
Okay. And the one you added about council approving of
That's under the preliminary
that's
plat.
under the preliminary
Yep.
plat. Okay. So my comment on bullet number 1 under the GIP is the part about the developer addressing to the satisfaction of the city engineer any recommendations identified by the TIA. And I bring that up because isn't it the Plan Commission or Public Works' responsibility to make the recommendations as to what recommendations from the TIA we're actually going to carry out? And I know that's those two don't always line up because that's the issue we face right now with the no left turn from Century Avenue onto Old Creek Road. It was recommended in the TIA to have that be a time of or a peak hour restriction, but the Public Works Committee recommended going further and making it a permanent. prohibition.
My response to that is that usually the Public Works Committee, it falls into their purview to address the TIA. If that's ultimately somebody is not pleased with what they've decided, then that I don't see why that couldn't come to the council. But again, the process for TIA approvals is in Sean's department.
Okay.
I think that's what you're asking, Alder Hanero, is
Yeah,
something that comes up that's not sufficient.
I'm mainly just trying to be very precise. You know, if we followed what this says, that means what's in the TIA needs to be implemented. But the recommendation really, it can be identified by the TIA, but also recommended by the Public Works Committee.
Yeah, and I think I would favor this saying Public Works Committee because they're the ones that actually, I mean, I'll give my recommendations after the TIA, but the Public Works Committee approves the TIA.
Yeah, they have the expertise, so.
Yeah, I'm not troubled either way. It's not like I'm gonna, sit in my tiny little kingdom downstairs and just stamp disapproved.
So you'd be comfortable with this saying then to the satisfaction of the Public Works?
In
Committee?
practice, that's how we do it. Yes.
Okay, I'll amend my motion then so that it says that.
Well, just to be clear, because there are residents who I'm sure I can see one listening, who have been following the traffic management plan or actually developing a traffic management plan. And there's a property owner in this area who has pointed to the TIA and said, this was recommended, why wasn't it done? And so what I'm trying to do is make sure that it's the Public Works Committee, not that the developer addresses to the satisfaction of the city and engineer the recommendations, but who are those recommendations coming from? It still has to meet the city engineer's satisfaction, but the recommendations are identified by the TIA and approved by the Public Works Committee. That's what I would add.
And that's how we do it in practice.
Exactly. Right. Yep. I think that would be better.
Well, and then there's the step where you approve the TIA, but then you have to go through that second step of reviewing it and making the changes as recommended by the TIA. So it's kind of if you want to lay out the whole process.
So Alder Ramsey, if you would be willing to add and approved by the Public Works Committee to the end of that first bullet, that's what I'm getting at.
Okay, is that okay with you, Alder? Okay. Okay, any further comments, Lisa, or otherwise now it's Elder Katie Nelson?
If I may, I would simply add that since this is just first reading, we can bring back that clarified language for your second reading. We'll just take care of it that way.
Thank you.
Okay. Elder Katie.
I was just going to agree with Alder Haniro on the point that while I also love the open green space, we do welcome this housing project. Part of our goal here in the city is to be able to have people live in the same city where they work. We have so many people commuting into this city. For example, a night like tonight, wouldn't it be nice not to have to commute out of the city from work? This is going to be a good opportunity for our workforce and our single families. So thanks.
Okay, I know Brian is listening. So, okay, so I have a.
Brian's already bought one of them.
So this is for Mark or Sean. So this has gone to Water Sources Management Commission. It has gone to Sustainability Committee twice. It has gone to Park Recreation and Forestry Commission, Conservation Land Commission, Public Works twice, Bike Ped and Transit Committee, of course, Plan Commission. You did try to incorporate, I didn't read all of those reports. I did look at them, but so I would imagine when you put this recommendation, you included their input.
I think that's a fair summation. I mean, this has been an evolving process. It takes a while to make lasagna. So
I can tell Mark likes lasagna.
Can you tell? Back to food again. Yeah, back to food. So I think it's a, the CLC committee especially gave us early input. I think it was April of last year, if I recall, it was almost a year ago. And so this has been percolating through our process and our staff review. Did I go back and look at everything that was said as I finalized our report? I mean, I didn't go back and look at every set of minutes, but the developer has over time been modifying the plan to respond to those comments. And they specifically in their submittal addressed how they responded to comments they got early on. So I'm satisfied that the GIP is reflective of the input that they've received in a sufficient manner.
Okay, thank you. I have a related question for Sean. So that is, a lot of these comments are coming from Old Creek Road. So you're addressing that issue differently or in some form?
Well, I would say that it was added into the scope of the study for the traffic impact analysis to see what the problems may be and to suggest resolution of them if they're identified.
Okay. Okay, any other questions or comments? Otherwise, all those in favor of the motion, and this is the first reading of the approving the ordinance rezoning lands from agriculture to planned development district, general implementation plan for Red Tail Ridge, acre farm development, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Just to clarify, and that was with the amendment to the first bullet.
It includes the amendment by.
Yep.
And the
Which you
updated
agree
language
to.
will come back to us for the second reading.
Thanks.
Okay, we are on to item number 2. This is the
Mayor, point of information, I guess I would suggest, since we're just talking about Red Tail Ridge right now, if the council would be agreeable to moving up the preliminary plat item that's related under planning and zoning.
Okay, let's go to that one. I think that probably makes sense. Okay, this is planning and zoning. Item number 1, preliminary plat, Red Tail Ridge, acre farm development, Button High Road and Pheasant Branch Road. Need a motion.
It's Alder Kuhn. I'll make that motion.
Need a second.
Yes, thank you.
This is Fazard. I shall second.
Okay, and this motion includes all the conditions which were included by the plan commission.
But if I may interrupt, sorry.
Yep.
So earlier today, I sent you an email with an explanation for why we're recommending one additional condition, and it's in the summary sheet, the updated summary sheet. So as I mentioned earlier, we have typically not required a fulfillment of a TIA as part of the preliminary plat approval. It typically has not been a condition of preliminary plat approval. I did consult with Larry about this question yesterday, and he concurred that it suffices to have the TIA be a condition of GIP of the zoning approval and not of the preliminary plat. But this discussion helped us, prompted us to recommend the addition of the condition of approval that reads as follows. Prior to approval of a final plat, the council shall approve a specific implementation plan pertaining to the entire area covered by the final plat. So I am recommending, and sent that to you earlier today, and it's in the summary sheet in the amended packet. I'm recommending that you add that as a condition of approval.
Is that okay with you, Alder Kuhn?
Yes.
And with Luke?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Bill and Brian, so that should be included as a part of the motion. So, okay, we had a lot of discussion. Okay, Anira.
I just had a question about the resolution of the names for the public and private streets. Someone could comment on that. And one of the questions I had is, are these, I know it's bird themed on purpose. I love that. I'm wondering if we could actually get some bird names for birds that are in the area. Because not all these birds even winter here.
So so I would suggest that maybe if you send me an email, I can forward that to the developer, just so that everyone knows the origin of it, because I was very, very touched by it when I heard it last week. We all remember probably Edwin Aker, the gentleman who farmed until he was, and he reached the age of, I think it was 102 or 103. And he oftentimes pulled the banner in the Good Neighbor Festival. Well, this used to be his farmstead, and his nickname was Bird. And so the developer saw fit to use that theme to honor his memory and his family, and the Aker family is very pleased. So in terms of what streets to name, they came up with, the names they came up with, they were trying not to have names that are duplicative of other names in the area. And that's the challenge we've had is in our, without going into too much detail, because that's not specifically before you, but the Public Safety Committee is going to take up a suggestion to modify our ordinance so that we have a little more flexibility with naming in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Katie? Sorry.
I would just like to say that my dog Matilda Blueberry was born on that farm. And I would love a street named after Matilda Blueberry. Yes, she did.
Yes.
I'll also note that there are a number of crows in the area.
Have you been counting them?
Bravo.
That's excellent.
Would you say there's a murder of crows?
I used that before, yes.
Well, any other question, comments, or anything? So otherwise, all those in favor of the motion to approve the preliminary plat for Red Tail Ridge Acre Farm Development between High Road and Pheasant Branch Road, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the request for having some roads named Crow and Matilda. Okay, motion passes unanimously. So we are on back to the item number 2 under ordinances, and this is the first reading. Ordinance relating to remote meetings by boards, committees, or commissions. Okay.
Somewhere.
Did I hear my name?
Oh, there he is.
I'm here. Yeah.
Hands up.
Right. I feel a little wimpy that I didn't get out and make the trek across town and see everybody there. I'm sorry. Yeah, so this is what I prepared. Kind of reflect what I understood the council was looking for in terms of setting up some rules for remote meeting for the boards, committees, and commissions. You know, I reviewed a lot of the materials that had been circulated, and you know, there's a lot of detail in some of them, and I think maybe some good stuff. But I think we figured in the discussion we had at L&O was that, you know, we've been meeting remotely for some time without any significant problems, and therefore probably a lot of minutia in the rules probably was not necessary, and allowed a little bit more flexibility to the various committees to decide how and when they wanted to do it. Certainly if we start seeing some issues, we can certainly change it, but I think this gives a sufficient direction without overloading things with a lot of procedural minutia. The one thing that I thought was sort of important that I still remains, keeps some restriction on this, is if you look in the rules for remote meeting under J4, there is a rule that basically says that remote meeting would not be allowed for any bodies meeting for the purpose of exercising quasi-judicial functions, or the plan commission in areas where it is authorized to make final determinations on certain like land divisions or conditional use permits. The reason for that is twofold. One, I think those kind of things, because you're presenting a bit more sometimes, and particularly with the quasi-judicial hearings, you're taking evidence. The in-person aspect of it, I think, becomes more important, and be sure that everyone gets to see the same things. But also you avoid, because you have deadlines and certain important things to happen, you avoid any potential confusion that may result if, somebody thought they were going to be able to appear remotely and then can't. And, if you get timelines disrupted, we have a lot of other things where, recommendations can come and, if something gets messed up, you can usually kick it to another date, but the consequences of those types of hearings and actions seemed to be an area where it made sense to require in-person meeting for those things. So that's kind of the only real hard and fast rule, other than generally needing to abide by open meetings law rules that is imposed by this.
So Matt, I was reading that article which Brian had forwarded from the municipality. So one of the guy who actually retired now, he wrote that we don't even need this, that it's already under the state statute, that our state statute doesn't really require that there has to be physical presence for the quorum. Do you agree with that person or not?
Well, I for the council itself, I think that is a tougher question. I think it's not clear, but I would agree. I don't think this is an absolute necessity to allow our boards, committees, and commissions to meet, but I think it's good to have it clear that it is allowed, and I think it makes sense to have some kind of outline and rules for how that's going to happen. And also, like I said, in particular, I'm recommending that there be this class of meetings where, outside of future emergency declarations, where you really should be meeting in person for those types of meetings. And to impose rules like that, you need an ordinance. So really, this just sets up expectations. But yeah, strictly speaking, could the committees continue to meet remotely without this? Yes, I think so.
Well, as I have said in the past, I'm in favor of people meeting in person unless there was an emergency. For example, when there was a COVID-19, it isn't there anymore. The quality of meeting in person is much better than otherwise. At least there has to be certain number of meetings in person so that people get to know each other. So that's my preference. It's an emergency situation, yes, but every day, no. Lisa.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I'm in favor of letting committees, commissions, and boards decide for themselves. So I can support this ordinance. I do have some questions for you, Matt, if you go back to the previous page.
Yep.
So in paragraph J, there's a reference to allowing a member to appear. Should that say one or more members?
Yeah, I suppose. I think you can get to the same place either way, but that might be. I could support making that change.
Okay, and then also I have a question about the video component, because I believe later in this paragraph it says with or without a video component. I recall from the orientation for new committee members that Mike Davis put on by Zoom, he was adamant that members of the committees would have to have their video, not just have a video component available, but have it on. Is that something that you would agree with?
Matt, if I may, this is Katie. We talked about that.
Okay.
And we wanted to keep it general so that the committees could decide.
Okay.
What are you talking about? Right
In
here?
case
I'm
someone
talking about
needed to call in.
right here.
Oh.
Because Mike, like I said, he attributed his insistence on this to open meetings laws, that as public officials,
Right, and let me address that a little bit. That is also somewhat baked into my J4, because if you read, I don't know if it's that league opinion. I think it actually was one of the attorney general opinions that talked about certain instances where remote meeting may not meet the requirements of the open meetings law. And one of them was in, quasi judicial hearings, or where you've got lots of materials and, somebody meeting remotely is not really participating the same way, or people that are only accessing the meeting remotely may not be participating in the same way, in which case that may not meet some of the terms of the open meetings law, being accessible and so forth. So part of that is, a good chunk of that, I think, is removed by requiring in-person meetings in the places that I have. That may not address all circumstances. So, we still have to examine in certain circumstances whether a telephone appearance is going to cause a problem. But by the same token, we have had people appearing, and certainly there are a great many issues and discussions where, it may be better to be in person, but I certainly don't think it's any kind of open meetings violation or, major impediment to have somebody appear by telephone. So it was drafted with that kind of flexibility in mind, but certainly if the council wished to insist upon a video component, we could certainly change that. That was just the reasoning that I had and behind drafting it.
If I can supplement that point, clearly we have long had the policy that people could participate with a squawk box before Zoom technology existed. So that is simply reiterating current policy. And if there was an electronic failure of Zoom for a meeting and you had a squawk box, that would be fine. That clearly complies with the open meetings law. Certainly I would agree that in many cases, electronic video is great, but not all cases is it absolutely necessary.
Thank you. And then I had a question about item 3, which is just showing at the bottom of the page. All requests for individual members to appear remotely, should that be by individual members? Like, is this getting at, if an individual member wants to participate remotely, they have to let staff or the chair know?
Yeah, right.
Okay, then I would change that to by, because it almost sounded to me like if the chair decides to hold the meeting remotely.
Yeah, no, I think that's fine. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Kathy.
Yeah, I still have a little bit of question on the phone call, because Larry, if I'm correct, you had to have the quorum, but the phone calls could be part of the meeting, but they wouldn't count towards having a quorum, but they could vote if they were on the phone.
For council meetings, yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah. And I don't know, I felt like some of the most frustrating meetings we had was because of a phone call. And I've read some of the documentation, and it said things like, if there's a phone call, then you should do a roll call vote. So because it's so easy for people not to turn the votes or say anything, and that, but if you're seeing somebody on the screen, if they're voting or not. But the roll call, that would be another thing. That seems like a lot of extra technicality. Another part, it said if you call in and then there was materials presented, I'm thinking like Public Works, because that's so intense of all the plans they pull up and stuff. And if they don't have access to those, then they're not allowed to vote. And that just seems like that's a lot to keep track of. Are you going to be able to vote on this item? Are you not going to be able to vote on that because you can't see the document if a new document came up? There was, I think it was in what you had, that Brian had sent out, that you had referenced. There was one place like that. I personally, I think we have the technology now. I would prefer to have the video component. I also understand the need to have options. A tourism meeting, someone had to call in, they were traveling and they dropped off. We had to wait until we got the quorum back on, and the phone call was the only way we were going to be able to continue our meeting. So I do understand it. My preference would be video, but I can and I don't think this is going to be a huge issue going forward. I think we're and getting down into the details and stuff.
Mhm.
And I can vote, I can accept this, but my preference would be if people would come in on video, it would be my preference, but I can get my
And
head
this is
around
the
it.
first reading, and I
Yeah.
think add all those things, yeah. Any other
Well,
questions?
can this then be, because I agree 100% that with this new technology, Zoom, it's like a Cadillac and the telephone is like a Yugo, if any of you remember what that was. So, I think if we can set a policy, which is what we're doing, our policy can be that, except in the extreme cases, that in order to participate, we're not making you come in person anymore. In order to participate, you need to have a screen, you need to be on the screen, we need to be able to see you. That is your, that's your in-person component. We know from, I don't mean to pick on the mayor, but we know from the instances when you've called in, Mr. Mayor, it just does not, it's more detrimental than it is helpful. So if we're making a policy and why don't we just use the technology we have and say that as part of the committee orientation, if you will, that our policy is that you are online with the screen under extreme emergencies, and you call into the chair and let them know, you can participate by telephone maybe, but we really ought to be pushing, if we're going to go this route, the closest thing to being in person is to have your face on a screen.
I agree. So I did try to use Zoom. Our technology wasn't there for me to be able to use it.
I understand.
Yes,
Just using it
yes,
for
yes.
illustrative points.
That's a
Trying to
good
pick up,
example. Yes, I agree. So any other questions or comments? Otherwise, we need a motion. Somebody need to make a motion, and it's only the first reading. Let's not.
This is Katie. I will move approval as recommended by Eleanor.
Need a second.
This is Fazard. I will second.
And do we want to incorporate some of the changes suggested here now?
Yeah, and I've already incorporated Alder Heniro's two
And
corrections.
you also was listening to Elder Dan Ramsey. I hope you were. So new technology, Cadillac, not the
Yugo.
not the Yugo. So.
Can I do your motion that we put in the video? Are you open?
Sure, I will amend my motion to include
preference for-
taking out the phone and placing an video.
I think you could just take.
It's
out
where it says
or
with or without a video component. Just take out or without.
Okay.
Or you could put prep. I don't know.
Just point of information, just to clarify the motion. So under section J, where it says remote meeting, it provides a definition for remote meeting technology, would be striking where it says or without a video component, or with or without a video component. So this clarifies that the requirement is for a video component.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
Is that okay with? Okay. All right. Any further questions or comments? Otherwise,
I want to say, I think this is a good compromise to have them in person or on video. I think this is a good middle point.
yeah, I know Verona has, you can have 4 video conferences, but otherwise all in person. So, okay, all those in favor of the ordinance relating to remote meeting by boards, committees, and commissions, as the motion made and amended, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. We are going further down to referrals. This is the interim report on referral to the city administrator and city attorney on concerns regarding MEDC. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as I included in the pack materials, a memo kind of laying out my thoughts on where to proceed with referral based on my conversation with the MEDC president. My recommendation is to provide a formal letter to them outlining a couple of areas that I outlined in the letter, specifically requesting a formal presentation before the city council for their annual report within the next 60 days. And then some policy language that the city council would ask the MADC board to consider deliberating and making an amendment to their operations and bylaws related to that. As I said, again, this is the interim report, so if there's new or additional information that comes in between now and middle of March, I will update the council, and if we get a response, if the council wants to direct the city attorney and myself to draft that letter, and we get a response to that letter prior to that mid-March timeline, we provide an update.
So to begin with, I would say excellent job, good start. So there are a lot of things which we need to still work out. So I think we will go item by item, and you're all welcome to participate. Annual report should be, now we have a one person they capitalize. We only have given them the land. They have been making all detailed regular report all the time, every year. So without any invitation. So we have to set the date. It happens on that date. And this date should be with all the audited reports and detailed report, not just folksy tales. So, and then the item number 2, non-disclosure agreement for city appointed members. So my preference would be, this is, we are dealing with the public money entrusted to this group. And there should be no, this is just not needed. This is not required. It shouldn't be there. It should be for all board, but we can talk about this. And I would just like, it should be like Madison Development Corporation and other corporations in Dane County. I know you mentioned there are 2 other, some in Fond du Lac and some Westwagon. So what we don't know is that if there's a public money or private money or combined. In this case, it started with 2.7 million of public money. And so I think, I don't think we want to go that route. And the number 3 is the bylaw modification on MAC approval or mayoral appointment to MADC, and I will let Larry take it. So we had a good discussion here, and Larry, you want to address this?
Yeah, I briefly talked with Brian, very, very briefly, and I need your materials.
Okay. Okay. Let me just...
Okay. I need the
yes
the bylaws.
Here it is.
Yeah, there's no problem with the language as far as it goes. The issue is that in the amended and restated bylaws by MADC, I think I still have the wrong one, but I think I can do this. There was there was language that basically provided.
Okay, here it is.
Yeah, thank you. And this is the 2022 revisions. The changes that are noted here that were discussed and recommended are, as I say, fine as far as they go, but the issue is language in 2.1C, which says that the appointed board member, in other words, the city representative, that their term shall terminate on June 30, 2024, and after that time, the MADC board shall no longer have an appointed board member, that is, a city representative, unless allowed by valid amendment to these bylaws. So, I mean, the changes are, as I say, good as far as they go. But if MADC is going to say yes and then terminate city representation on the board in 2024, that doesn't solve the city's concerns.
And the second part, that was a mayor and or his designee and the elder. And this just deletes that. So it has to be mayor or his designee and the elder. Ellen,
Larry, could you repeat the number of the item that you just referenced, phasing out council representation
yeah, that's in 2024.
It's in the
section?
version, in the amended and restated code of bylaws for MADC dated May 19, 2022. And the provision is 2.1C, which terminates any appointed board members after, in other words, city representatives, after June 30, 2024.
And that would be okay with me if we liquidate the assets and bring that money to the city. We are borrowing money where we are paying the interest, and here's between $4 and $5 million sitting somewhere and getting nothing for it. Ellen, you had some question?
Well, I was just going to make a motion. I appreciate the Brian's thoughtfulness in putting together this really comprehensive memo. And I was going to suggest that we accept recommendations 1 through 4, with the only change being extend the time period to the next 90 days instead of the next 60 days, because that gets us past the end of April. Swearing in, I think a meeting with MADC should take place after the new council is sworn in.
So you, under 3, you are saying that it's okay that after 2024, there's no city representation of any kind?
Well, that's why I was asking Larry to clarify which section it is, because I don't see in this memo a reference to 2024, June 30, 2024 being an end date.
Well,
So
it just
It's in
further
the bylaws of MADC. It's not in the memo.
Okay. Well, then I would amend my motion to include as in recommendation number 3, incorporating into Brian's letter a request that they also consider amending the bylaws to strike the termination date, June 30, 2024.
well, this is simply.
Is anyone interested in seconding my?
Good, and reframe that last, or restate that last component of the bylaws. I'm sorry.
Well, so accepting Brian's recommendations 1 through 4, changing the 60 days to 90 days for the meeting, and then in recommendation number 3, adding an explicit reference to the section Larry just quoted that basically phases out our representation on the MADC board as of June of 2024.
So would you agree to add mayor or his designee as a member? It used to be for 50 years.
I'm comfortable as long as we have representation. And also you'll see that item number 4 includes having, or recommendation number 4 includes having the city administrator or their designee be invited to attend as an ex officio member. So I think having that type of representation, I'm comfortable with.
Well, but that's the additional vote. I mean, the mayor.
I will second Alder Hanairo's motion.
Thank you.
Okay.
And if you're opening up discussion, I will just say that the reason I limited it to 1 through 4 instead of adding 5 is I'm thrilled that the Merle program was successful. I'm not sure we need a Merle 2. It seems like the businesses, it seems like the pandemic itself is no longer affecting businesses so much as the post-pandemic economy that we're in. And I'm not sure there's anything we can do about that.
And I think number 5 would be a good thing to do after we have 1 through 4 hammered out and agreed upon.
Agreed.
Before we even start the discussion on another moral program. Brian, have you had conversations with the chair of MADC? So your recommendations, have you had any conversations about these recommendations?
Not my memo specifically, but in broad strokes, the items that are included in here in terms of the annual report, I think the MDC chair and I would hope by extension, the MDC board would be supportive of them coming in front of the city council. What that presentation looks like, I think that remains to be seen in terms of the level of depth that they get to in the information. So I'm sure that'll be a continued discussion point. The switch from MDAs to more of a closed session type model. That's something that he'd be willing to bring to the board for discussion, but he couldn't, make a determination on that at the time that we talked. The bylaw modifications, that's a piece that again would need their board so he wasn't able to comment, whether or not he thought that would get their approval. But I did convey the council's concern about wanting to make sure that there was representation from the council and staff to increase communication between the two bodies. So that, at least in general terms, was
And the representation would be the mayor appointing a council member who would be then voted on by the rest of the council?
Correct.
I can confirm that the MADC chair is comfortable with the outline of Brian's memo and recommendations.
Well, it's not in the best interest of the city. I mean, that's.
I can confirm that he's the MADC chair is comfortable with the outline of these recommendations.
I just want to say thank you for asking them to come and talk to us for the annual report. It is something that is needed, and the communications, the ongoing communications is greatly appreciated.
Okay, any other questions or comments? I'm okay with just to let you know with number 1, but we are representing the 23,000 people of the city, and our job is to protect the interest of our taxpayers. So number 1 is fine. And number 2, non-disclosure of the city, that's fine. Number 3 is not acceptable unless mayor and his appointed designee, and then extending this term forever, not just 25, unless we are going to liquidate this group and bring the money to the city. I'm okay with 4.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to call the question.
Okay. So if there are no further questions or comments, well, okay, so is there a second?
I seconded the motion.
Okay, but second to the, am I supposed to first vote on the calling the question or just go to the motion?
Well, if we're going to be technical, that's a motion seconded and voted on. Typically in the past, the motion has terminated discussion, but if we're being
all right.
strict.
All those in favor of the motion made by Elder Haniro and second by Elder Luke, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we move on to
Was that the motion to call the question or the motion on the interim report as made? Okay, just want to make sure.
Just make sure the date was stricken from the bylaws.
Okay. Okay, the next is the committee appointments. Need a motion to approve.
The motion to approve the appointment of Becca Burkholzer to the commission, and
I think we skipped discussion. I'm sorry, Alder Olson, but.
Oh, okay, I apologize. There's a discussion on the report of the city committees, boards and commissions from elder persons as necessary. I thank you. Okay, anybody wants to please raise your hand if you want. Okay, go ahead. Luke.
Mine is super short. I just wanted to report that the Stormwater Working Group that formed after the Committee of the Whole meeting, we're still waiting to schedule our first meeting. The town of Springfield is gathering some information for us.
And by the way, that's a good thing to do to start that group.
I really like the way you included somebody from stormwater that, you know, had the more expertise. I think that that's such an important step, bridging with the town of Springfield, because they don't have access to some of that. So I think that was very, very good.
Luke?
The Fire Commission has appointed former Middleton Common Council member Julie Burnett as its new chair. The passing of Ken Sipsma, and the town of Westport has appointed his successor as well. For those of you who have not interfaced with Julie, she's great. She's going to be a phenomenal chair for the Fire Commission moving forward.
Okay, anyone else?
Aging Commission met this week. If you ever want to come and meet some great folks, come on down. They meet monthly and it's a nice, well-run meeting. But we just had standard topics and they are still dealing with the hot lunch issue in the county, but it's kind of coming to an end. And the one thing that will happen from that is the reminder that we do not have a commercial kitchen. And they said that the county may someday make a regulation change for them to have one. So that's just something to keep on the finance radar. Not be anytime soon, but
Are they working, at least putting some plans together?
they knew all the things that have to happen. And it's part of the issue is physical space and then having to actually retrofit it. So that's a good question. But they made it through this time, but they said other senior centers do have commercial kitchens. So they were able to quickly make hot lunches for folks where we had to do cold sack lunches. So.
Okay, well, we had a CDA meeting. Do you? Anyway, I guess that's okay. There wasn't really something outstanding. We dealt with the regular issues. Anyone else? Okay. We are done with that one and we go to the committee appointments now. So do I have a motion to approve these two? No.
Not that I started that. I will make a motion to approve the appointment of Anna Burkholder to the Youth Commission and the appointment of Sandy Lewis to the Landmarks Commission.
This is Bizarre. I'll second those nominations.
Okay, any questions or comments? I know Sandy Lewis has been waiting for a long time and Anna would make a great youth commission member. Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve the appointments of Anna Burkholder to Youth Commission and appointment of Sandy Lewis to Landmark Commission, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Need a motion to go into closed session.
Mrs. Alder-Kuhn, I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion to go into closed session, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes and let's close the doors and.
Brian has his hand up.
We're still on.
Like you have 4 people in the corner.
Nice video. Use it.
Well, I haven't looked at the leaves. So. I can do it. by the company. This is what I was.
I know. You know,
So how does it, where does it fit? So where-
well, again, the. The issue is, where's the default under the lease? Rent,
I see you up close,
Or
Alder Panayra.
use operation.
The YouTube
Those
still
are our
says we're
own
live.
obli- The agreement,
Have to change
that's
my
why.